All right, Phil Michaels, welcome to the Happy Hustle podcast, my brother. I am super stoked to connect.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. Such an honor, such a pleasure. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. This is seriously going to be an awesome interview. I'm super stoked to talk about high performance tactics. I mean, you are a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur. You're the CEO of Tembo. You sit on the board at Harvard. You have clients from MIT, and you really just you catalyze entrepreneurship in the sense of how to be heart-centered and humble, but yet still get shit done. And I like that about you. And we connected, for years now digitally on masterminds. And now finally we connected in Montana in person. And It was an amazing experience. Just super grateful to have you on, Phil.
Yeah,
What's
Carrie.
something? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you again. I just want to share some gratitude. Thank you to you and Steph for hosting us and opening your home to us. Going out into Montana, such a beautiful experience. And it reminded us how grateful we are to live in the US, where you have like 50 different countries all in one country. It's beautiful. So thank you for that.
Of course, man. I mean, it was awesome to have you guys. And, Montana is spectacular, but just so everyone's watching, let's make sure they know there's tons of grizzlies and it gets really cold in the winter. So I don't know if you guys want to come. We're trying to keep it on the DL.
Yeah, it sounds like, coming from Tampa, Florida too, it's a dichotomy between the contrast of environments, and it was a beautiful place. So thank you.
For sure, man. Well, Phil, let's get into it. What's something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
Sure. I would say I was lucky enough to be on a TV show called Shark Tank on ABC. You probably heard of it. It's an entrepreneurial show. And I was pre-med. I started working for the New York Yankees team physician. I was on this trajectory to be an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon. And then all of a sudden, a buddy of mine and I decided, let's try this fitness app that we wanted to build, and let's apply for Shark Tank on ABC. What the hell? Well, now a fitness app doesn't sound like an innovative idea, but back then in season 4, it wasn't as saturated and competitive of a market as it is now. Back then it was still novel. So we pitched this idea out of 36,000 applicants. We were one of the 141 finalists. Got to work directly with Kate Ryu, the executive producer, and you could still watch our audition tape on YouTube. It's pretty funny and entertaining. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, we've since dissolved the business, but what that did, Carrie, was change the entire trajectory of my life. Instead of pursuing medicine, I now decided I'm going to pursue business and entrepreneurship, which I had previously never thought of as a potential career. And of course, my mother, Italian mother from New Jersey, it was a difficult conversation. She's like, who the hell quits the New York Yankees? And what the hell is an entrepreneur?
That's funny.
So that was a pretty difficult conversation to have, but it's changed my life. I went on to get my MBA and Masters of Science in Marketing, traveled the world, spoken in 24 countries, and that led to where I'm at now, which is starting my own company and being a coach now for other entrepreneurs.
That's so awesome. And I can only imagine your mom, in that conversation, just leaving, such a glorious job to then, be an entrepreneur, which if anyone knows the success rate with entrepreneurs, I mean, what is it, like 98% fail within the first year or something ridiculous? It's
a lot of risk, but a lot of reward. And once you work for yourself, I don't think you could ever go back to working for somebody else, because you're building your dream instead of somebody else's. And I'm sure, other people that are watching can relate to having their parents maybe want the best for them, but their version of the best for them is different than your own version of your best for you. And so for me, it was very different than what my mom expected. But, to an old school Italian mother in New Jersey, the answer to, any challenges or obstacles you come across is just drink more coffee, smoke more cigarettes, and just keep grinding, work harder, which is so dichotomous from how I live my life and the lifestyle entrepreneurship that I live now.
For sure, man. I mean, personally, I wouldn't have it any other way. The entrepreneurial, grind is so rewarding when you do achieve your goals and when you do create freedom. And that's what the Happy Hustle is all about. And that's why I like to interview people like yourself who've been able to create that level of abundance and freedom, but yet still make a positive impact on the world, that's still able to use, his company to really help others. And that's, what business is all about, solving other people's problems. And I want to get into your main venture, Tembo, because I love this concept. And when you first told me about it, I was like, that is such a great idea. Mind blown. Talk to us a little bit about Tembo and how you started it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Carrie. And by the way, for those listening, I never had planned for this to happen. It was never my path. I was shadowing doctors since I was 11. So my path and trajectory was toward being an eye doctor. But then when I look back, once I got that entrepreneurial bug, I looked back and I'm like, wait a second. My whole life, since I was a young child, about 5 years old, I had been living this entrepreneurial hustle, this happy hustle of a journey, but I never looked at it as a career. I was doing the lemonade, the typical lemonade stand I would go out to the soccer moms. I would steal my sister's puppet show play set and I would set up my lemonade stand using hers. And then in middle school, I started selling Pokemon cards. And I remember this
good
day,
old Pokemon.
Pokemon cards. I never enjoyed the game, but I loved flipping them and hustling. So I used to have this baseball card binder where I would insert all my Pokemon cards. And I would go to these kids and I would sell them. And I remember this one day, Kerry, I sold a Charizard, which is like the best card in the deck. It's like this.
The creme de la creme.
The creme de la creme, this flaming orange dragon. I sold it for $50. And I thought, I'm on top of the world. My mom's never going to have to work again. I told mom, like, life is set. And it's amazing what your mindset is like at that early age, that nascent stages of development of entrepreneurial journey. And then I went on in high school. I was a bookie. I was flipping football, American football pools. So I was getting my friends to write out who they thought was going to win that week. And then in college, I started a nightlife promotion company. And then I started a fitness company and another fitness company, and then Tembo. And the reason I bring this up is to say, even though through all of those years, I was building these entrepreneurial ventures, I never looked at it as a career. It was just always something I did on the side. Like, this is the way to grind and hustle and work through life. But then eventually it led me to take a more professional and proper approach. And that's what led me to Tembo. So to answer your question, I was traveling around the world, spent time in 5 continents, and I saw a lot of initiatives were donating either food, water, housing, or healthcare. No one was really focused on education. And to me, it was a no-brainer. Why not educate people to solve their own problems rather than donating? Kind of like the old adage, give a man a fish versus teach them how to fish. We wanted to teach people how to fish so they could solve their own problems. It seemed like a much more sustainable approach. Yeah. So once we made that decision, I said, you know what? Why not start at the earliest age possible? 0 to 6 is the most imperative for brain development. About 90% of the brain is formed by ages 4 and 5. So this is the most important time, most imperative time to get structured stimuli in the brain and educate it. But when we looked into the education initiatives that were available for that age group, most of them were not focused on that primary school or pre-primary school. Most of them were focused on secondary school or higher ed, even though the most important is early childhood development. So when we looked into early childhood development, there was 2 main solutions. They were either building schools or developing a mobile app. The answer wasn't schools. In the developing nations, there's tons of schools. I lived in the slums of Nigeria, arguably the worst slums in the world, and they have tons of schools for this age group. The problem is the schools are more like daycare drop-off centers rather than high-quality educational institutions. So little to no materials, teacher attendance is low. Sometimes they don't even have a curriculum, but yet they have tons of schools. It's more like a place where parents could drop off their kid while they go to work. With the app, a lot of them don't have smartphones. And the ones that do have smartphones can't afford the mobile data on a consistent basis to be able to properly use the app. So we said, okay, schools are not the answer, an app's not the answer. Let's figure out what are they already using every day as an existing distribution channel that we can work with. That's when we decided, let's use text messages. Everybody uses text messages. It's the most used communication platform in the world. And WhatsApp is number 2. Facebook Messenger is number 3. So we said, okay, let's try this. So I moved to Nigeria. I'm living in Nigeria, and we tested out using SMS text messages. So we educate 0 to 6-year-old children around the world using text messages by sending one activity per day to the parent's phone. The parent educates their child using that day's activity, and then we reward the parent for educating their child with Amazon gift cards, mobile data for their phone, whatever that culture is interested in. And so that's kind of how we got started, and it ended up working. We're now in 5 countries. Nestle's been our biggest customer. One of our first funders was the co-owner of the Boston Red Sox, the majority owner of the Boston Red Sox. So we've been very lucky and grateful to get to where we are today, and we still have a lot of work to do.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that story of how you started as just hustling early on, flipping Charizards and booking, to then a fitness app, to then now, actually making a positive impact in thousands of young, underprivileged kids' lives around the world. And just because you started with an idea, okay, here's a problem that needs to be solved. And that's what you can do out there, you happy hustlers listening. Like, think of what problem needs to be solved that you're passionate about. Phil chose education for these underprivileged kids in these developing nations. And he created a whole curriculum and a system around how to reach this demographic using text messages. And, oftentimes we might try to overcomplicate things, right? Like these apps and these smartphones, but you took it back to the basics. You were like, you know what? I'm going to actually create a simple delivery system, text messages, one activity a day. I'm going to incentivize the parents to actually do the activities with their kids by giving them gift cards and data.
Instant
brilliant.
gratification.
And then you get big funders who want to make a big impact in the world, but just don't know how sometimes to support the cause and help fund it. It's a brilliant idea. Where is Tembo now? Talk to us a little bit about the where Tembo's trending towards, and how people, maybe watching or listening could even help and support the mission.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the most common questions we got as soon as I came back from Nigeria.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear you.
I can hear you. Can't hear me?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay now? Test, check.
Let me change this. Is it? I don't know if it's your audio or mine.
I'm testing it right now. It says it's working.
Oh, okay. There you go. Sorry.
Okay. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so to answer your question, yes. After I came back from living in Nigeria, the most common question I got back in the US was, yeah, Phil, that's great what you did over there, but when can you bring this here to America? We need this here for our own children. And I was thinking, come on, you guys have tons of resources, free opportunities. There's tons of information in the US, so many free resources. And they said, yeah, that's exactly it. There's so much out there. We're drowning in noise, drowning in information, and it's overwhelming. But if we could get one simple text message every day, I would use it. And so we started saying, maybe we're onto something here. We started exploring. We talked to parents. They said, I have 3 different apps I'm supposed to download for one of my children. I have 3 children. He's like, I have 7 different passwords. And he's like, Phil, I got to be honest, I don't use any of them. But if I could get a simple text message each day with an activity I could do with my child that doesn't involve screen time, I would use it. So we started launching in the US. So we're now in 5 countries, including the US. And we're now also an official WhatsApp educator. So we have the green check mark on WhatsApp. As you know, outside of the US, WhatsApp is a very popular form of communication. So we're now accessible on WhatsApp. And currently where we're at is we're launching a new technology where we'll be able to sign up parents from any country in the world on their own. So currently the business model is a business, government, or foundation pays on behalf of the children. Second most common customer is the school or daycare paying for their own children. And the third most common is a parent paying for themselves. We have all 3, but they're in that order of most common and most attractive to us. Like an example of our number 1 is a Nestle, right? Nestle can educate many children with their resources. So they use our platform to educate children, but parents can sign up on their own. So if your audience does want to get involved or help, they can go to our website, temboeducationgroup.com. Tembo, by the way, you might be wondering, what is that? Tembo means elephant in Swahili. And the reason we chose an elephant is because elephants are known for being the most compassionate parents in the animal kingdom. And since our education focuses on the parents of the children, we felt like it was a good symbol for our social enterprise. So you'll see in our logo, we have like the parent elephant and then the baby elephant right behind it. But that's where Tembo came from.
That's awesome. I love that. Elephants
Thank you.
are great too. Who doesn't love elephants?
Everybody loves an elephant. We actually have a funny story about that. We used to be called, when we first started, we were called Athalo. Athalo is a Greek amalgamation of the word Athalo, or Apollo, and Athena. You know, the Greek god of wisdom, Athena, and the Greek god of knowledge, Apollo. Well, we put Apollo and Athena together, you get Athalo. And so our logo was the symbol of Athena, which was the wreath of Averna, and the symbol of Apollo, which is the owl. So we put them together. We had the owl and then the wreath of Averna around it. And we get a call like early on from our legal team. And they're like, you know, Phil, you're not going to want to hear this, but we have some bad news. You don't have to change it right away, but you're going to be at risk for a lawsuit if you move forward with this. Your logo looks very similar to TripAdvisor. If you've seen TripAdvisor's logo, whenever they give an award or the people's choice to a hotel or a destination, they'll put their logo, which is an owl, and they'll put like a wreath of Averna around it. Little did our logo designer know, it looks similar, not quite the same, but similar enough where it wasn't worth it. And so while living in Nigeria, I have to now go through a whole rebranding process. It's all about adapt or die. So we decided to adapt. We did a 3-month brainstorming process. I learned the design thinking approach from Stanford's D School, which helped us come up with a new logo, a new name. And that's how we came up with Tembo, which again means elephant in Swahili. So we're grateful.
That's great. That's so cool, man. And guys, I highly recommend going to temboeducation.com, checking it out. I mean, just learning about it's temboeducation.com, correct?
Temboeducationgroup.com.
Temboeducationgroup.
This is another great hustle story. So like somebody already owned temboeducation.com. It was like a marketing company. I find out where they're operating. It's in Philadelphia, which is where I was born. And so I said, you know what? Let's show up there. So I get them a bunch of gifts and we go show up at the office. They're like, listen, you know, you have the company website, but you're not really using it. It's more of your back-facing website. Is there any way we could purchase it for you? We met them in person. They were real kind and real nice, but unfortunately we weren't able to close the deal. So one day, hopefully they'll be nice enough and generous enough to let us have it. But so right now it's temboeducationgroup.com or tembotexts.com is what we're doing now. And I'll tell you what COVID has done, Carrie. COVID led to a lot of people reaching out to us, a lot of companies reaching out to us, say, hey, wait a second. Even though you're an education company, we want to reach people digitally because now with COVID, we need a better way and more efficient and effective way to reach our customers, our partners, and our team even. And text messages are a way to do that. So now we've been working with not just education. We're now calling it Tembo Texts because we're serving an energy company right now, real estate company, any company that needs to reach their audience through text message. This is a way to do it. And 90% of people answer their text message within 3 minutes of receiving it. Those kind of response rates are much higher than email. That's typically around 30% if you're lucky.
Yeah, well, that's such a good point. And I love how you diversified and essentially saw another need in the market, given the pandemic, given COVID, how people need to reach one another, especially, you know, through education, and also for other, you know, various mediums for different companies that want to just connect. And obviously we all check our texts. So it's a great point. And I love how you adapt.
It's a way to play offense rather than defense. You know, there's a common saying in business you've probably heard, your audience has probably heard, which is never let a good crisis go to waste. Crises are where opportunities present themselves. And some people are either going to take advantage of those opportunities or they're going to shy away and miss them. So this is a way to play offense, not defense. Ask yourself, what opportunities present themselves now during a crisis that most people are not thinking about? Because this is when people make their money. This is when people really make their pivots and adapt and introduce product market fit, introduce product line extensions, service line extensions, when the least people are thinking about it. So I hope that can help the audience. But the curriculum, by the way, you mentioned the curriculum, It's mostly built from our team from Harvard's Graduate School of Education based on the developmental milestones of Harvard's Center for the Developing Child. And it covers all 4 domains of learning. Because you might be wondering, well, how much can you really fit in a text message, Phil?
Yeah.
A lot, actually. And it's all sequential learning. So it starts at prenatal at week 13 in the mother's womb, all the way through 6 years of age. And now we even have to 9 years of age. And it covers all 4 domains of learning. So language, cognitive, motor, and social emotional. So we're giving you a comprehensive curriculum from your child at week 13 all the way through 6 and even 9 years old. And the reason we start at week 13 is because that's the first time that neurons are created in the brain, in the occipital and temporal lobe of the brain. So we figured, why not start at the very earliest stage possible, when the brain is just starting to create those neurons, start firing synapses, so we could then develop sensitivity. Because what happens in stimuli is what happens, Carrie, at age around 2 to 4, we go through a process, every human goes through this, called synapse pruning, where basically your brain, and you know this, your body is always trying to conserve energy. So your brain basically says, you know what? We're not using these synapses too often, these neurons too often. Let's prune off the ones that we're not using that often and just maintain cellular energy for the ones that we are using. So if you're not having structured stimuli, a regular cadence of structured stimuli to all areas of the brain to fire these synapses, your brain says, let's cut these off. And so for about 2 years, from ages 2 to 4, you'll typically have synapse pruning where those never come back. So you have this, at birth, you have about 100% malleability of the brain, meaning and it's very easy to create new neural connections in the brain. As soon as you're born, dramatically drops. At 8 months old, it drops to about 50% malleability, 8 months old. And then from 8 months to about 6 years of age, it drops almost another 50%. Close to 0% malleability of the brain for the rest of your life. And this has been proven to reach 40 years of life and later in research. So while the malleability is decreasing, the physiological effort to create new neurons is increasing. So it's working against you. This is the same reason why it's so easy for young children to learn multiple languages. And right now for you and I to take up 3 new languages would be extremely difficult, would consume a lot of our cognitive bandwidth in order to do so. We only have so much cognitive bandwidth each day. So we need to do things to create new neural connections on a regular basis to keep our mind fresh, because there is neuroplasticity. The brain can change. I don't want you to think that there's no malleability. It's just dramatically decreased by the time that our brain is fully developed. So these are little ways that we can enhance our cognitive bandwidth is, 1, start your most mentally taxing, difficult task first thing when you have the highest amount of cognitive bandwidth. And for some people, that's not in the morning. So the Eat That Frog mentality by Brian Tracy is take your most mentally taxing, chunkiest task, the most difficult, the one you might be pushing off for procrastination. Do that one first when you have the highest cognitive bandwidth. The thing is, after Dr. Daniel Pink's research came out in the book When, there's 3 main times when you have cognitive bandwidth ebbs and flows. So there's 3 main stages. There's the peak, the trough, and the rebound. So the peak is when you have the highest cognitive bandwidth. The trough is when you have the lowest cognitive bandwidth, and your rebound comes back up, but not as high as the peak. And you should perform different activities. So these are talking about your high performance tactics. This is one of them. So I could share this in your show notes with you, but there's an assessment you can take based on Dr. Daniel Pink's research to identify where is your peak, where is your trough, where is your rebound? Is it morning, afternoon, evening? For a lark, it's typically early morning, like we're talking 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. Then you have your third bird, which is where the majority of people sit, which is typically around 7 to 9 a.m. And then you have the night owl, as we typically call them, which is late afternoon or evening, where they typically have those higher levels of energy or cognitive bandwidth. Identifying where those are throughout your day is important to make sure you're performing the right tasks at the right time. So during a peak, you want to have your most analytical decisions being made, the highest cognitive bandwidth consuming tasks. During your trough is when you went more creative-like insight tasks. and maybe meeting someone for the first time, really letting your creative energy and natural impression come out. And then during your rebound is when you want more menial or trivial tasks, mundane tasks, like let's say emails or some administrative work that you need to do. So that's my motivational rant about.
Yeah, no, I let you go. I was like, hey, he's on a tangent. Go for it, Phil. But I love that you identify as a high performance tactic when you are best suited to accomplish the tasks that you know need to get done. What was that link where people can go if they're just listening? I'll put it in the show notes as well, but
the URL is a bit funky.
Okay.
So I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I'll send it to you because it's got a bunch of numbers and letters in there. But the book is called When by Dr. Daniel Pink. Yeah. And that's about timing, about cognitive bandwidth. This is the book I recommend more often than any other book. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller, founder of Keller Williams Real Estate, the largest real estate company in the world. And it's all about cognitive bandwidth and how you can get the most out of it each day.
Yep. Yeah, I'd love that book and recommend it to a lot of happy hustlers. Now, Phil, let's get into some tangible tactics. I always like to give the happy hustlers listening and watching some, take homes in different disciplines, health, finances, spirituality. Let's start with health because I know you're big into health and fitness. Yes. Talk to us a little bit about some of your happy hustle hacks, will you, to stay in peak performance?
Sure. And I'll tell you how I got in this to give your audience some context. After I started Tembo, I was lucky enough to be published in Forbes magazine as a top 30 entrepreneurs under the age of 30. That led to a lot of publicity and recognition where a bunch of hustlers and business owners reached out and said, hey, Phil, can you help me with my business? Yeah. I said, sure, I'd love to. I started doing it on the side. And what happened, Carrie, was two things. I really freaking love it and I'm really freaking good at it. And so I looked at that as a career, and that's what I spend most of my time doing, coaching mostly CEOs at Harvard and MIT, but also the #1 poker player in the world, the #1 Middle Eastern rapper in Dubai. And so I teach these performance tactics because I tested them on myself first, saw they worked, and then I now share them with my clients. So one of the most common I share with my clients is starting your day off. There's so many different morning routines, and I took the best from each one I learned about, whether it's from Tony Robbins or let's say Gary Vee, Tai Lopez, whoever you like. I pulled from the best, the researchers from When, etc., Dr. Daniel Pink, Gary Keller, and I identified 3 main things that people typically think of when they think of performing in their peak state at the top 1% of their game. And it's food, water, and breathing. Now, which one can you go the longest before you would die without consuming? Well, food, that's the shortest. The food, which one can you go the longest without consuming before you would die? It would be food. Food you can go pretty long without before you would actually die from starvation. What would be second? The water.
Water, yeah.
So water, and then first one, if you lack oxygen to the brain for even just a few minutes, you'll have permanent brain damage. So we want to get breath into the brain, into the cells as fast as possible. So as soon as I wake up, I do something a neuroscientist from UPenn taught me, which is 10 power breaths with cat-cows. So you know the famous yoga pose, the cat-cows, where you arch your back on all fours and then you bend it back. And I do those to provide the cerebral spinal fluid to go through the central nervous system from the spinal cord up through the brain while I'm doing these power breaths. And the power breaths are on a 1-4-2 ratio. So for me, that means inhaling 5 seconds, hold for 20 seconds, exhale for 10 seconds. So inhale 5, hold 20, exhale 10. That's on a 1-4-2 ratio. I recommend starting with something smaller, but as long as it's on a 1-4-2 ratio, inhale, hold, exhale. I do 10 of those power breaths while I'm doing the cat-cows to immediately flood the body with oxygen, flood the brain, flood the central nervous system, flood my cells with oxygen, because that's what ignites energy. That's what gets your body started. People that start off with caffeine is a diuretic. It dehydrates the body. You want to do the opposite. You want to hydrate the body as fast as possible to get the cells moving, because they denature while we're sleeping. So they actually shrivel up the cellular membrane. And so in order to get the cellular membrane full so it can move around, your brain's made of cells, your lungs are made of cells, your skin's, everything is made of cells, your blood's made of cells. So we want to get the cells operating as fast, as efficient, and as effective as possible. The way we do that, oxygen. So oxygen is first with the cat-cows to get the cerebral spinal fluid going through the spine. And then immediately drink water. You got to get water into the body. And then I get exposure to sunlight. The eyes are the most vascular part of the body. So we want to get exposure to vitamin D as quickly as possible. And that sets the circadian rhythm, which is called in Dr. Daniel Pink's research, the chronotype. So what you're going to do when you find out this assessment is you're going to find out what is your chronotype. Are you a lark, a third bird, or a night owl? So exposure to sunlight as fast as possible. The meditation, CIA actually just declassified their investigation on transcendental meditation. That's what I'm trained on. It's commonly called TM. It's what Oprah does, Ellen DeGeneres, Jerry Seinfeld, Howard Stern. A lot of famous people use this. It was taught in Ivy Leagues in the 70s as a required course. Wow. Transcendental Meditation, TM.org. I don't work for them, so disclaimer, I don't get compensated for saying it. But I immediately go into the TM meditation. It's 20 minutes twice a day, no app, no guidance. It's completely unguided. And CIA just declassified their investigation on it because it's so powerful for being a free thinker, for getting your brain to fire on all cylinders. So one of the neuroscientists I interviewed on my podcast, he's a neuroscientist at McGill. He specifically focuses on a part of the prefrontal cortex called the Brodmann Area 10. It's amazing that what we're learning about neuroscience, but we're still in the nascent stages of understanding the brain. And one of the things he studies is post-mortem brain tissue samples. It means after people die, he takes the brain tissue and studies where were the cellular molecular pathways for what maybe happened in your childhood, a traumatic event that led to some of the traumatic stress that you're experiencing in the brain from a physiological perspective. We're now knowing how important these experiences of stimuli are affecting the physiological nature and neuroplasticity of the brain. So getting the meditation in changes the brain, changes the physiological nature of the gray matter in the brain. So CIA is recognizing this, Ivy Leagues are recognizing this, neuroscientists are recognizing this. And back in the 70s, this was considered airy-fairy bullshit. Yeah. Simply because we didn't have the technology and science to study it. Now we do. And so got to get the meditation in. What I typically recommend is if you're just starting out, Oprah and Deepak Chopra have a 21-day meditation. That's really great. That's how I started out. Headspace is a great app. Calm is a great app. But one, if you like variety and you don't like listening to the same person speak to you over and over again, or you don't like listening to the same nature sounds, Insight Timer. Insight Timer is a platform for meditation practitioners from all around the world that provide their meditation on the app. So you can listen to males, females, long meditations, short meditations, guided, unguided, nature sounds, someone talking to you. They have everything. So if you like to switch it up and you like the variety, that's a plethora of different options for you to meditate. And so then the last thing I'll share is the rebounder. You and I both have a rebounder. Yep. It's a mini trampoline. It's what Tony Robbins uses every day before he goes on stage to perform. Yep. And what it does is lymphocyze the body. So the lymphatic system's how we get the toxins out of our body. And what happens is when you shock the lymphatic system, this is why your lymph nodes typically get swollen when you have inflammation or an infection in your neck, under your armpit. They'll check your lymph nodes. So the lymphatic fluid needs to be moving through the body, and a way you can do it and shock the body is through rebounding. You jump on a mini trampoline, but what I recommend is getting the one with bungee cables instead of metal springs, and you'll notice 2 times the force of gravity coming down on you. And what this does is a process called autolysis, where your cells start to clean out dead, damaged, and old cells and replace them with brand new cells to change the body. And what is the body made up of? Cells. Yep. So the conclusion is think of the body and the health on a cellular level. If you do that, it's going to change how you eat, how you think, how you drink and consume water, how you breathe, and everything. How you perform.
Yeah, for sure, man. That was great. So just to recap, guys, first and foremost, you have to be breathing in the morning.
First
I
thing.
mean, Phil does the cat cows, in 10 deep breaths and hyperoxygenates his whole entire body to start. Then you definitely want to get some form of meditation. He uses TM, transcendental meditation. There's a ton out there, but the science is out on meditation. You have to be doing it in some way, shape, or form if you do want to become a high performer. And then the third thing that you mentioned, hyperoxygenating, yes, but also hyperhydrating, making sure that's really, we
Water
are dehydrated. When we go to sleep at night, we wake up dehydrated.
and the sun.
Oh, and the sun's super important, making sure, I like to sun gaze inverted, looking 45 degrees off the sun every single morning, and just grounded barefoot in the grass to just get connected to Pachamama, Mother Earth. And then also you mentioned the rebounder. I got a rebounder. You got a rebounder. A lot of high performers do. And it's necessary to shake out that lymphatic drainage system and, stimulate regeneration within the cells. So great points there, Phil. You got, a lot of science behind it, which I love about you. There's like always like the actual facts, but then also the scientific literature to back up the facts. So I love that. Phil, let's talk about what'd you say?
I have another tactic if you like this stuff.
I want to hear it.
Your audience are high performers already, high achievers. We all want to perform at the top 1%. And a lot of that includes content assimilation, knowledge assimilation. And one of the ways we do that is through reading books or listening to audiobooks. Well, I created this reading trick to get the most out of my knowledge assimilation, the most out of reading. And I'll share with your audience. So I did this back in 2013 because I noticed I was reading a lot of books, but I realized the best books are the ones you often reference back to. And so if you're not referencing back to them and applying them in real life, they just become a stale book on your bookshelf. So how do you get the most out of your reading? I created this trick using this pen. So you've probably seen this, the 4 colors, a Bic pen. You typically see the blue and white container, but I'll teach you what I use for each color. So red is for those words that I don't know, I'm unfamiliar with, and I need to define them in the book. So I'm learning new vocabulary. So that's what I use red for. Blue is my version of highlighting. So anything I want to underline, I use blue for. Green is for action items. So anytime this book recommends another book, for example, and they say, oh, in a great book, blah, 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 by this author, I'll highlight it in green. That means it's an action item. It's something for me to go and look up or research. It might be a concept, a statistic, a study that I want to go and later pick up. And then lastly is black. And the reason I use black is for these little Post-it notes. So this is the key. So this is called The Power of Habit by Dr. Charles Duhigg. Really great book if you haven't already read it. But these little mini Post-it notes have a concept or a statistic on each one. So I write down the page number and I write down the concept. So this one says the science behind good music. So every time that I have a statistic or something I want to remember, the sleepwalking story of the man that killed his wife, study on gamblers. So that way, the next time I reference back to this book, I don't have to reread the whole thing. I just go back to the major concepts that I put on the Post-it note that has the page number and the name of the concept. So that's how I'm able to remember and cite all these statistics because they're so fresh in my mind because I share them with others. And what's the best way to re-ingrain this knowledge in your head is reference back to it, spaced repetition, and then sharing it with others. This is why teaching someone something, a concept or a methodology is the best way to learn it yourself. Yeah. So this is how I do it.
So you don't actually write in the book though, you write on the Post-it notes, correct?
I write on the Post-it note and then I use the blue highlighter to underline the actual concept and what it was about. So this one's, for example, addiction is not necessarily physical. It's more a mental thing. And then the research on how to stop a bad habit. And then I underline the actual process of
okay.
Addiction not necessarily being physical and the study.
That's a great reading trick. I'm definitely going to start trying that. And, I love reading, but I also understand exactly what you're saying, where you don't actually assimilate all of the content, all of the knowledge. A lot of times, if you don't implement it right away, it gets lost forever or until you pick up that book again, which is rare, most of the times. So great points there,
Exactly.
Phil.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Go ahead.
well, I want to talk about finances because I think finances are an important part in being a happy hustler and creating a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. You want that freedom, and your finances are really important. And right now, given, the economic downturn that is projected, and also given the crisis that we're in the midst of, let's talk about how you happy hustle your finances, some of
Absolutely.
those tactics or tools that you utilize that maybe the happy hustlers could benefit from.
I love this topic, and it's so important with the timing and the current events going on right now. And there's a common saying in finance, which is when everybody's scared, be greedy. And when everyone's greedy, be scared. So right now is the time that you want to be greedy. There's going to be a lot of opportunities like we talked about. Never let a good crisis go to waste. This is a crisis going on that we could take advantage of. So when everything's going to hit the fan, and it's continued to do so, I've been buying more. So you're getting everything at a discount right now. And then years from now, you're gonna thank yourself. A year from now, you're gonna wish you started today. So now's the opportunity. So the first thing is use that saying to your advantage. Second thing is, one of the best books I've read about finance in the current times is Unshakable by Tony Robbins. Very applicable, step by step by step. And one of the things he talks about, he interviewed Warren Buffett, Sir Richard Templeton, Ray Dalio, the most successful investors in the world. And he wanted to identify what are the one common trends and patterns that they all have. And the one thing amongst all of them that they had was never leave the market. Unless you're a day trader and you're really skilled and talented at trading and buying low, selling high every single day in fractions of seconds, you should just stay in the market. And the reason why is because the market has never gone down over long periods of time. It's always gone up. It will always bounce back up. So there's always ebbs and flows. But if you look at since the stock market's ever started, it's only gone up, ever. So he breaks this down step by step, that just stay in the market. Don't try to read every ebb and flow unless you're a day trader and this is what you do for a career.
Yeah.
So what I've learned in my life being an entrepreneur, Carrie, is focus on what you're best at, outsource the rest. I'm not a day trader, so I hire people that are. I make sure my finances taken care of. So what do I use? He recommends using a financial advisor that has 0.5% or below fees, which is extremely rare. Most are at 1 or 1.5%, which doesn't sound like a huge difference. He shows you in his book how much
over time.
5 with compounding interest. You'll be blown away by how much money you're saving and losing if you don't follow and heed his advice. So what I do is I took it a step further. I use an app called Wealthfront, and I don't work for them, so I don't get compensated for telling this. Wealthfront is an app that does this for you. They've built algorithms to track where the market is and when's the best time to diversify your portfolio. So instead of investing in specific individual companies, which can go up and down, they can go out of business, they can crush it one day, not crush it the next. That's too volatile unless you're a day trader. So what I do is I invest in the stock market as a whole. So if you were to sum up the entire premise of the book, it's invest in America, bet on America, because it's always gone up year after year after year, ever since the stock market's been created. So this is investing in the stock market, and it diversifies my portfolio for me. So whether it's Wealthfront, Tim Ferriss is actually the first person that recommended it to me. That's how I got involved. I've been investing since 2017, and it's been a game changer. I've made more in my financial investments using that app than in any of my other, in my real estate investments, any of my other investments, which are also doing great. And then if you're using real estate investing, Fundrise is the same exact as Wealthfront, except for real estate. So instead of investing directly in the stock market, you're investing directly in real estate, but letting people that know better than you do it for you. Focus on what you're best at, outsource the rest. These are guys that spend every day of their life making sure they're making the best investments for you. Fundrise for real estate and Wealthfront for the stock market. This is the best part. Wealthfront only takes less than 0.5%, it's 0.25%. Doesn't sound like a lot unless you know finance and unless you know about compounding interest. 0.25 difference from which he recommends is get 0.5% or below. These guys are crushing it. So I'm really proud to share that because it's worked for me. And I always test things on myself first. Once I see it works for myself, I try to share it with my friends, my family, and now your audience. Again, insider tips.
There you go. Happy hustlers out there. Check out those tools and tactics to optimize your finances. I like those a lot, Phil. I'll definitely be checking out Wealthfront.
The last thing I'll say too, by the way, is I share this on my website, share exercises like this on my website, iamphilmichaels.com, where I created this exercise to take you through your ideal life financed. Your perfect, most absolute best life that you want to live if you're not already living it now. And what exact number, down to the penny, we map out what would it take to get you there? Is it $136,000 a year? Is it $50,000 a year? Is it $7 million a year? You'd be surprised by what you learn. All my clients have gone through this exercise and they're blown away at the end, like, wow, I didn't realize how off I was in my estimation of what I thought I needed to be happy. And what I thought I needed to live my ideal life. And now it becomes real because you have a measurable metric that you can quantify it with rather than just being esoteric or ambiguous about how do you want to live your ideal life? Because there's a lot of airy-fairy BS out there. Like, oh, my ideal day would consist of this. Okay, let's assign a number to that. Let's schedule it. Let's put a time, a date. Let's map it out so this becomes a reality and not just a dream.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, goal setting is essential, guys, and reverse engineering that process, knowing where you want to go, knowing the number that is attached to that lifestyle. You know, I always recall this exercise I did, which was crafting my perfect day from every single minute from when I woke up to when I went to bed. And now when I look back, it's like so funny because so many of those different minutes are accounted for in my current reality, you know, like how I wake up, what I get to do, what I obviously I'm still happy hustling for more in different realities, but I urge everyone to go through your perfect day. What is exactly incorporated in that day, and then build your reality around it. And
to echo that, there's another tactic you can use not only in your ideal day, but in finance. In finance, we call this assign every dollar a job. Every single dollar should have a job. So on the flip side, on your ideal life, assign every hour a job.
Yeah, love that, man. Well, this has been great, Phil. I want to knock out the rapid fire round. This is where I just ask you random questions and you answer honestly, first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
All right. Favorite movie? Go.
Gladiator.
Oh, favorite food?
Aurelius. Fried plantains, plantanos fritos, lamadoros with the sugar on top.
Yeah. Favorite book? Go.
Flow by Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It's the intersection of your greatest passion and your greatest competency, which is ultimately your purpose.
What's your spirit animal?
Lion.
Best business advice?
Focus on what you're best at, outsource the rest.
Favorite cliche saying?
This is good. Life is so important. So it's actually here. There's no passion to be found in settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living. Nelson Mandela.
That's good. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Fly.
What's your favorite biohack, quote unquote?
Rebounding.
Go-to supplement.
Anytime I'm feeling just low energy, I just hit the rebounder. Even right before this podcast, I'm like, let's get the energy up, baby.
Yep. Go-to supplement.
Go-to supplement. I don't really supplement that much, but I would say my girl likes to make me fresh mint, ginger, and lemon tea with just water. It's delicious.
Hey, that counts. One word you wish to be synonymous with your name for the rest of your life.
Impact.
Love it. And 3 things you're most grateful for right now, Phil.
Being on the show with you, I would say the sun and the wind to the earth, the fire. The earth is just so beautiful. And after experiencing Montana with you, it was just such a blessing to reconnect with nature and grounding the soul to the earth's energy. And then lastly, I would say knowledge assimilation, just maximizing human potential on a consistent daily basis. And that's what I get to do, in life. That's why I'm a coach right now. And one of the sayings I always share with people is every athlete doesn't have a coach, but every Olympian does.
That's good. I like that. Phil, where can people go to find out more about you? Give us some links. Tell us, tell the Happy Hustlers where they can go to connect more. I know IG is big for you and you have an awesome feed. Give us some links.
At I am Phil Michaels is my Instagram handle, or iamphilmichaels.com. Keep it simple.
There you go. And that's Michaels, Michaels. I am Phil, PHIL.
Yeah, Michael with an S.
There you go. Love it, Phil. And I just want to acknowledge you for sharing your love, your light, your wisdom, all of your high performance, happy hustle hacks. You crushed it. And this was an awesome interview. So thank you, brother. Now, final question. What does happy hustling mean to you?
Oh, happy hustling means to me finding the intersection of your greatest passion and your greatest competency, because ultimately that's what your purpose is, which is flow state. And once you find that, you share it with as many people in the world as possible to impact them in a positive way. And, speaking of podcasts, that's one of the reasons I started my podcast, which is the only podcast in the world that interviews those that have made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And I wanted to share with people how others are crushing it. The peak performers that have made the Forbes list, how are they doing it? And let me share it with as many people as possible to impact their lives in a positive way.
Oh.
And you're doing that with the Happy Hustle. So
awesome, bro. So check it out, guys. Check out his podcast and go to iamphilmichaels.com to get all the links and follow him on the IG. Thank you, Phil. This has been awesome, brother.
You're the man. Thanks,
Peace and love, y'all. Thanks for listening.